Coin traders, what's going on? Gonna be looking at the Bitcoin dominance here in the video today and kind of talking about the overall setup because we know that Bitcoin has been the big driver, and since a lot of the crypto pairings are based on Bitcoin, that's why we look at dominance so much. And so do want to be talking about that a little bit in the show today, especially since right now we're seeing a very big resistance point touch right at about the 48% dominance line that you can see we have been holding for about a year and a half, ever since the spring back in 2021. So that's why we do call the spring kind of the big peak of the last bull market, which kind of was a little bit weird since November was when we saw all-time highs come in for several cryptos. But for most of the crypto market, we did see May have the peak euphoria and a lot of the hype. So that's why we do have it, especially since altcoins did take over so much. But in the video, we do need to talk about kind of what we anticipate happening from here, especially since a lot of the Bitcoin dominance and the overall crypto space is going to be driven by economic factors and not necessarily normal crypto trading patterns like we have experienced on previous cycles. So just again to highlight right now, kind of right at the resistance point that we've seen, especially the last multiple tests. But if we actually look down to support, we can see that the whole time we've actually been holding a very nice and reasonable support, just dipping down below the 40% support line only a handful of times. So you can see many tests, so about 5 tests, 2, 3, a little bit dippage below, and then 4, and then finally 5 when we did hit our peak of the mass euphoria cycle last May of 2021. So now that we have been holding support and then also testing resistance, this is another test of a very big resistance point. And typically what we have happen, for example, like in June, we smashed up against this level, and then that's actually when we saw cryptos spiking a little bit, and that's what pulled dominance down since a lot of the cryptos were rallying month over month until we got into the late summer back in September. And then finally, after the FTX flush confirmed support of this level, we saw another rally and a nice test of a lot of growth. And obviously just in the most recent week, we've seen a huge spike, especially since altcoins haven't caught up yet. And a lot of the banking FUD money has been flowing into Bitcoin. So a lot of speculation right now is that money is going to be flowing into altcoins from Bitcoin. But the thing is that a lot of the altcoins right now aren't necessarily set up in a pattern that would actually warrant that much speculation. Now, you do have a lot of great cryptos that are still looking pretty good. And for example, let's go ahead and look at the Ethereum pairing. This is actually a pretty nice setup when we talk about an overall chart setup. And although we had a little bit of dip back in June, we're now starting to see this accumulation, but it has broken bearish again. So ideally what we'd love to see is this turn into a little bit more of a monthly pattern where we actually start to see consolidation on the monthly, confirming supports. But so the point that I need to drive home about this pattern is that we had a very nice consolidation, which we would have loved to have seen a nice bullish break from, but unfortunately we didn't see that, and we did see a lot of money now flow into Bitcoin, which has pushed this Ethereum Bitcoin pairing down and bearish out of this otherwise bullish pattern. So since Ethereum is the next biggest market cap, and especially in dominance as well, and as a matter of fact, we can actually flip over and look at the Ethereum dominance on the weekly. You can see it's right at about 20%. So what I'm trying to say here is that when we have a dominance factor of 20% of the overall cryptocurrency space in one altcoin, you can see that because the pattern then in that instance has been breaking bearish, we're actually leaning a lot more bullish for Bitcoin. So when we go back and look at this overall dominance chart, that's actually favoring a little bit more sideways trading and kind of honestly a little bit more of that bullish break of this big resistance point, which not necessarily is the worst thing since we're still in the midst of coming out of a pretty long sustained bear market. And even after the last bear market, you can see we actually had a very nice increase of Bitcoin dominance running up to test and smash resistance point at about 72% before finally finding our downside pullback, but yet again testing about 40%. So I don't think that it would be unreasonable, especially if bulls are able to break this dominance, to see Bitcoin run up and actually test about 50% dominance, because we've had a lot of growth for Bitcoin right now, and altcoins just have been super laggy, and the chart setups are still looking pretty awful, like they're not necessarily in the best shape to see a pump and a lot of great growth that would lead to the dominance in Bitcoin actually pulling back. You see, so typically what happens is that we have a rise in Bitcoin price, but yet altcoins kind of stay stagnant, and yet then altcoins take off while Bitcoin is consolidating. And it's this overall price stagnation for Bitcoin, yet a rally for altcoins that actually starts to pull back the dominance. And so if we actually look at Bitcoin, for example, and we flip over into the daily, we're looking at a pretty nice period of prolonged consolidation and sideways trading where this would have been the opportunity for altcoins to really take off. But we haven't actually seen that. And in fact, we've actually kind of had the opposite, where on these type of bearish days for a Bitcoin, where we're down about 0.7, less than a percent, if we look at a lot of the other cryptos, we're actually down more than that, about 2 to 3% plus. So we know that a lot of crypto strength isn't necessarily with altcoins right now, and it is still with Bitcoin. So that's why when we do flip over and look at dominance again, this is not necessarily the best setup. But one thing we do know is that we are smashing into resistance, so we could see a little bit more change and deviation, especially after seeing a lot of upside moves that have pushed Bitcoin dominance into this 48% level. So if we look at the 2-day dominance right now and look at just all the stair-step type patterns, so once we bounced off our bottom at about 39%, found a higher low, ran up, higher low, ran up, higher low, and then now we're bouncing off again, probably pulling back to look for a higher low. And I would expect even if we do get a pullback, it's not necessarily going to be that significant, and probably and realistically, we would get maybe down to about the 46%, or even potentially based on these technical targets down to about 45%. So that could be a potential zone. And let's go ahead and clear this up for a second. And in that instance, if we get down to about 45 to about 46, for example, that would be a very nice target to allow these exponentials to get there and actually see another bounce off of about the 50 like we've seen a couple of times already. So we do know that the trend is still very much in Bitcoin's favor right now, and we are starting to see a little bit more signs of the possibility and probability of this dominance actually breaking above the 48% and seeing a run to about the 50% dominance level. Do keep in mind, though, that that does mean that alts still will eventually catch up. It's just that Bitcoin is going to be taking the lead, and then ultimately we will see a retracement in dominance, and that's where altcoins will really start to take off. Right now, though, dominance is still king for Bitcoin, and especially with all of the global financial factors, we do see a lot of money and a lot of focus and attention on Bitcoin right now, especially since typically we do think of it as being a little bit more of that safer name, just because it has been around the longest. It's the first, it's the biggest, it's the king. It does have the biggest market cap, and it also has a lot of institutional funds. And that's why, too, that I think, especially if we go back and we look at all of these other rejections from resistance, we see a quick run-up and a quick rejection, quick run-up and quick rejection. So this is the time right now where we've actually seen a run-up and several bars continuing to maintain this level, and we haven't gotten that immediate rejection like we typically get when we do run up and test this 48% level. So that's another reason why I'm actually thinking Bitcoin has a little bit more consolidation to go and actually isn't immediately at risk of completely retracing and having the altcoins see a huge, massive spike without Bitcoin following along. So even if we do see a rally across crypto, as long as Bitcoin does keep up, that actually will make dominance stay flat. Like we said, though, we have been smashed up against resistance, and likely we could see a small retracement, but ideally it probably wouldn't be anything super significant. And even looking at a Fibonacci, for example, we could be looking at a retracement down to about 23.6, which would be about 46.7 dominance, all the way down to even potentially 38.2 at 46%, which is exactly the targets that we have picked to the downside. So I would expect that to happen here eventually pretty soon. But overall, nothing really major at risk. And overall, that probably would just set us up to consolidate on dominance before likely blowing above that 48% resistance and actually seeing Bitcoin take the lead again. But as we just saw, consolidation never means that we're always going to get bullish from there, so we could ultimately get a pullback as well. But that's why it is going to be imperative for the altcoin bulls to actually show their strength. Right now, though, we're just not seeing it. But I would love to know all your comments, feedback, and thoughts down in the comments sections, and what you think is going to happen with altcoins and the dominance right here. So with that, that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up the show for today. This will be the last analysis until about Monday. I am about to be heading out of town here. And so do appreciate you sticking with me to the end. If you did enjoy the show, please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe. If you have not done so just yet, it does mean so much. Also means so much for all the continuous love and support, so thank you very much. Do appreciate all of that. Stay safe, take care, everyone, and I'll catch you back in the next video.